Back here with this week's edition of the 10-Minute War, our good friend and Ohio State fan, Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. He's got a phenomenal YouTube channel in his own right. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Good to see you, Steve. Maybe we've got some hope.
I do think we have some hope. I had an Ohio State media guy, you may know, Kyle Lamb, send me a direct message the other day saying, man, you know the Big Ten is wrong if they've united Michigan fans like you with Ohio State fans like me. And I said, Kyle, I'm just doing my small part to make sure y'all get your perennial opportunity to humiliate us again this year. All right, but if you look at where things are at, and I know you had a chance to read the article I wrote for Sports Illustrated, I just laid that data out for our audience. I mean, when only 0.26% of the people in our footprint, and there's 85 million people live in this footprint, Mark, when only 0.26% of them are a positive COVID case, I mean, I don't know how much lower the numbers get. Without a meaningful vaccine or natural herd immunity, how do you do much better than we're doing right now? So if it's not safe to play now, when is it safe? The political heat on the Big Ten has only grown. If we're not at DEFCON 1 right now, we're at DEFCON 2, and that could be why people from Dan Patrick to Teddy Greenstein at the Chicago Tribune are now saying they're hearing that the Big Ten is looking to go as soon as October the 10th, provided they have all their safety protocols in place. What are your thoughts, Mark?
So in regards to the Ohio State and Michigan collaboration, desperate times mean desperate measures, of course, as we are looking at the pressure being put on from the very highest office in the land. A 15 to 20 minute meeting reported this afternoon between President Trump and Kevin Warren, in which testing seemed to be the predominant issue that the president and maybe Kevin Warren expressed to the president as being the hindrance behind playing football at any time soon. But yes, an October 10th date has been leaked out. I set it up a couple of days ago that October 24th, in just eyeing the calendar, setting forth a reasonable calendar season for the Big Ten and playing 10 games, giving 2 bye weeks, one of those coming at the conclusion of the season for a team to prepare for the college football playoff. That October 24th would be the very last Saturday that the Big Ten could sync up with the other 3 conferences to compete for the college football playoff, with not a whole lot of room for canceled games. But October 10th would leave another 2 dates on the calendar, another 2 weeks to provide that flexibility. And this is good news for anybody who wants to see Big Ten football, of course. That this, and also just for the American way, that if you organize, if you unite in one voice and pull together and are perseverant and adamant, you can get some things done still in this country. Apparently, we shall see.
One of the things I heard from someone who works with a major television network, not the one you work with, another one, because I want to make sure I'm not doing a passive-aggressive way of saying, Mark is my source without outing him. No, this is a totally different source. It's not you. They had told me yesterday that the reason why the other networks, or all the networks, were holding off coming out with a fall football schedule beyond the first week or two is they essentially had been talking behind the scenes with the Big Ten this entire time, trying to stop them from committing fratricide, basically, and saying, hey, seriously, guys. I mean, look at the opening weekend. Fox just released their promo for the opening weekend. They're going to go with a 2-hour time or 2-hour pregame show to try to compete with College Game Day. Good luck with that. But they're going with a 2-hour pregame show. And all of those avails, it's all Big 12 games on every single Fox station across the country all weekend long. That's an incredible amount of exposure for that league. Okay. And of course, most of those are windows that would have gone to Big 10 games instead, right? So this source said to me, that's why we don't know even the headline games, week 3 and 4, what time of the day they're going to kick off at. It's because these conversations were being had behind the scenes until the very last minute to try to convince the Big Ten to get its head out of its ass, frankly, Mark.
Well, the Big Ten, not necessarily of what's being decided and what power structure is in place of the Big Ten, but the Big Ten as we know it in regards to it being a football power, a national brand, of course, and the TV ratings that it pulls along with the SEC as being generally the top 10 rated games in the nation coming from those two conferences, that that the networks and the other conferences would be willing to drag and stall and wait and push and try to bring along the Big Ten. So considering all the missteps made by Kevin Warren and the 11 presidents in particular, the voice of the people and the reason of the other three conferences may finally win out and deliver football for us. And we can only hope at this point.
I said last week when the Thanksgiving thing leaked out, they're going to play in October because it didn't make any sense. I mean, if you're going to play at Thanksgiving, the other leagues are still at the tail ends of their seasons. So now you have the worst of both worlds. If you want to wait and play next year, you've got the window all to yourself, all right, especially in the wintertime when people in our part of the country aren't going and doing a lot of traveling anyway, but watching more TV because it's winter, right? That there's an argument for, doing a one-off in January and just owning that TV spotlight, right? But playing Thanksgiving weekend and starting there is the worst of both worlds. The other leagues are in the heat of their seasons, deciding postseason of bids and the playoffs and everything else. And all you did was just tell your fans, hey, we just waited long enough so you wouldn't have a chance at the playoffs. You wouldn't have a chance to, for individual honors, awards, Heisman trophies. That was the worst of both worlds. It made no sense. If you're going to push into the fall, you might as well start in October and give yourselves a chance to go ahead and have somewhat of a normal season. And it appears that is where the momentum is heading. If it ends up there, do you want to see the Big Ten revamp the schedule that it came out with in August? I do. I like to see them say, you know what? We can have Ohio State and Michigan finish the season against each other now. All right, we're gonna scrap that entire thing. Here's the new official schedule for the Big Ten. What are your thoughts?
Briefly back to the Thanksgiving weekend startup time. Just to extend on your point, I've been talking about it on my channel for the last few days, ever since it was rumored. Imagine the laughing stock that the Big Ten would be and the insignificance of the play on the field would be when you've got three conferences competing for a national championship, so determining their conference champions, that it obviously then goes into the 14 playoff generally, playing at the same time that the Big Ten's opening a season. And regardless of how big those matchups typically would be, Ohio State, Penn State, for example, just the social media backlash of what a joke this is. This conference is not competing with everyone else, so these games are meaningless. I don't even know what the national media outlets, how they would even report or give any significance to those games. It'd probably be the end of the college football final on ESPN, for example, on Saturday night, because the games are meaningless. And can you imagine the weekend of the college football playoff in which maybe a Friday night semifinal is then followed by week 7 of the Big Ten season the next day? That's meaningless. Okay, back to the October startup.
That's an excellent point, by the way, brother. That is an excellent point. Yep.
It would look so foolish.
Yeah.
It would just be awful.
I mean, this is the league that invented expansion when it brought Penn State in. We forced the SEC to respond to us. We're the league that invented television networks. We forced the SEC and everybody else to respond to us. And now we're the league, the very first league that's been the trailblazer since the dawn of collegiate sports. We're going to go ahead and play our season at a time that it couldn't be any more insignificant than it would be. You're right. That's a great point, Mark.
Steve, I'm on board with your format to go back to a traditional Big Ten season. There's no reason not to do that. Let's get back to what it typically would be, although I got to say that I would not be that critical of staying with the revised schedule as it stands. We've been able to make it this far. We're on the brink of college football in its entirety. We've got one game in the books, Central Arkansas and Austin Peay. So things are shaping up, I think, more favorably than what we heard out of the fearmongers going back to the first week of June when the athletes first hit campus.
What does this say about the future of our league, in your view, Mark? Or is this a one-off? Or we don't know if they play in October, cooler heads prevail. In the end, the American people typically are a forgiving society. If you take the long and winding road, John Lennon, to give them what they want, they'll forgive you. It's when you take the long and winding road and then don't that they don't, right? And so maybe this is an asterisk. Maybe we all just move on from this. What do you think? What's the long-term ramifications of all of this?
People care about the result. They care about the conclusion. I was asked the other day by several people whether Kevin Warren would get fired over this. I said, well, we got to see it play out in regards to if they're sticking to their guns. Let's see if the Big Ten wins the outcome, or the ACC, the Big 12, or the SEC. Now, if we can save the Big Ten, get them started on October 10th, all is going to be forgiven because they're playing actual college football with everybody else and competing for a college football playoff berth. And I think all is forgiven. I think, sure, there are going to be critics 3 years from now, 5 years from now, that will point back to the Big Ten making stupid decisions, but all will be forgiven. When the football is played on the field with everyone else, that's all that anybody really cares about.
Agreed, but I also will say this. This is already Kevin Warren's only mulligan, okay? And he's 1 year in. Now, I don't think all of this is his fault. I think he views himself as a proxy tool for the presidents, and I think they tried to use this as a means of trying to get back control of Big Ten athletics with Jim Delaney out of the way and try to rein things in and reassert, their place of prominence, and just viewed a rookie commissioner as their tool that they could just roll. But I think this is the mulligan. There cannot be any more major missteps after this. I think the margin for error for all of these people is about zero after this one.
I want to take into account difficult situations, crisis management. It's easy to stand on the sideline or sit on Twitter and criticize. But the big issue in all of this was obviously not waiting and looking at options.
That's
it was
right.
Pulling the trigger in panic and in fear.
That's exactly right. Well said. Mark, good to have you with us as always, man. Hopefully next week we've got even bigger and better news to talk about. All right, take care.
Appreciate it, Steve.